Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 40 of Exit Philosophy Season 2. Our co-host, now that
There's only one host.
Scotty Mac has gone in a different direction and is settled in Nova Scotia, and he goes to watch the big moon and the Bay of Fundy come in and out. Yeah, that's fine if that's what you want. But
We
here,
run out of time for stuff like this. That's
yeah,
important, very important.
we're here for a serious baseball conversation, and we're here not to criticize. We're here to suggest improvements for the game, improvements for the Blue Jays. We don't pick up on rumors and then say maybe this will happen because we've been around the game. Mal has been 12 years as the director of communications for the Blue Jays. I was 4, much shorter reign, but I've been 52 years in the game. So Mal, mid 90s, started in the press box at the Blue Jays at Sky Dome, then Rogers Center. So there's a lot of experience coming at you here. But one thing that really struck me and I loved was the story. And apparently you were supposed to be named after Mickey Mantle, but you weren't.
That's correct. Somebody nixed the deal, mother, smartly
At least
at
you
the
weren't
last
being,
minute. But
at least
it's
you
a
weren't
theme
being,
that's prevailed in the family, obviously.
yeah, at least you weren't being named Seven, as in the Seinfeld episode.
That's right.
But you took it a step further, and your son is Mattingly, named
Yeah,
after the before he became the whipping boy in the Blue Jays dugout.
right.
He was an all-star and
In
one of
hindsight, as they say, maybe not such a good idea.
but Don Mattingly, your son is Mattingly Romanen. And there's a great story that you told me when Mattingly was going to school at Chicago University,
Chicago State, yeah.
Chicago State University, playing baseball. And they went on a road trip, Western Athletic Conference, which seems odd, but
Yeah, yeah, it was very odd. The travel was unbelievable, but that's where
uh,
they ended up. College
so
conferences these days they don't exactly make a lot of sense.
yeah, they were precursors to what's happening now.
Right, right.
But then they went to the West Coast and played Seattle University. And tell me what
Correct.
happened there.
Well, they played as a Friday night game, I believe. I could be wrong there, but it's my recollection. They're playing Seattle, who was a pretty good team at that point, but there was a young, tall left-hander that they were facing that they knew that was pretty good, had pretty good stuff. I mean, at that point, as a freshman coming into the game, so you didn't know a whole ton other than his obvious talents. And I remember Mattingly was leading off that day for Chicago, and the young fellow's name was Tariq Scoble. So it was their first look at somebody of that ilk. So obviously, for the guys, Mattingly would tell me the story that when they were sitting in the dugout trying to figure out how they're going to handle somebody with that kind of stuff. So it was an opportunity for all of them. So I've mentioned obviously the game went well for Mattingly, maybe not the club. So it's kind of his claim to fame. Obviously, he played some Division I baseball and a little bit of pro baseball too. So on that day, he was leading off and he led off with a home run off Scoble, which was the only run they got that day. So it took a 3-1 fastball and hit it to left field, obviously, and they thought the game would go a little better than that, but Tariq settled in and pitched a complete game, 11-1 victory against them. But he ended up 2 for 3 with a walk, so that's his claim to fame. So you always have that when they're talking about what did you do in baseball. So
I'm sure that memory lingers on with Mattingly and yourself far more than it does with Tariq Scoop.
Tariq, I don't know, maybe it could have changed. You never know how, things chase the course of one's career, like maybe he had to rethink that moment about how did that happen?
Yeah, he made some adjustments and
Make some adjustments.
that's his history.
Yeah, that's right. One guy's making a lot of money.
So the playoffs are well underway. The Major League playoffs are well underway, and we've got down to the Final Four, the ALCS with the Yankees and Guardians, and the National League with the Mets and Dodgers. And it's not coincidentally, I think, three of the top four payrolls in the three top payrolls in Major League Baseball are among the final four. We'll get into that in a minute, but what are your impressions of each series? Let's talk first of the Guardians and the Yankees.
Well, overall, I'll even say both series. I mean, we could talk about that one specifically. I think the thing that's most notable is how climactic they are compared to what happened previous in the playoffs. I mean, they've been kind of, you know, not a lot of drama going on in both series. Um, I mean, the Guardians just haven't looked like they're firing all cylinders. I thought they would actually give them a better run so far. The bullpen, they're a bullpen team, and they're kind of running out of gas. To get to this level, when you're a bullpen team, sometimes when you're going, deep into October, you run the risk of running guys out every day, and it wears them down. So they're not exactly having guys go 7 innings in the rotation. So they're mixing and matching, and I think at some point you just kind of run out of juice, and maybe they have. I mean, anything can happen. It's a short series, right? So.
Yeah, I think that, well, in my previews on griffstopitch.com, on my previews of the two series, I suggested that the best bullpens were the Guardians and the Dodgers. And they're both
True.
taking advantage of that. But as you point out, they may have reached a point, and it's only halfway through the championship series, that the bullpens are running on fumes. The bullpens are running out of gas. I had a look at, and we are going to talk about why the playoffs have changed in this way, gone more bullpen centric, and why it's not good for Major League Baseball and the TV audiences and the fan bases. We'll talk about that in a minute, but just as a point about what we're talking, the Dodgers on their active playoff roster in the championship series are only carrying 63 starts out of the 162 games that they played this year. There's only pitchers that have combined for 63 starts out of the 162, and they've got 601 and 2/3 regular season innings combined on the active roster, and the year took 1,445.2. So they've got like 40% of the innings that carried them to the NL West title. They've only got 40% of those pitching innings there. And that to me explains why they're going to the bullpen so much. I don't think that either the Dodgers or Guardians, who are both bullpen centric teams, have a start of more than 5 innings. They might have one or two max over the 3 rounds, 2 rounds. So we were talking about that before. What are your thoughts on why this is happening and how it can be improved? And God knows it can all be improved.
It has to be, doesn't it? I mean, and the funny thing is, the Dodgers have a tremendous shot to win the World Series. The fact that that's even possible, I think, is a bit of a symptom of what, is the overall some issues that exist with Major League Baseball. When you're running random player X out who really wasn't even a part of your club or didn't contribute to the same level that, guys that got you there, you're missing the broader point of what's the story Major League Baseball is telling. I mean, what are people sinking their teeth into about this Dodger club? It's not, there's no, Oral Hershiser's anymore with shutout streaks and dominating, or Madison Bumgarner's a streak he put up, whether you like it or not, Fernando Valenzuela's. I think it shows that I always like to say when I was in PR or anything, when you're telling a story, the best story wins. And it feels like we're not telling good stories anymore. It's mix and match, micromanage, win at all costs today, but the bigger picture of the beauty of the game is being missed, in my opinion. Now, a team like Cleveland, maybe because the payroll is not big enough, they can't survive this, and maybe the Dodgers can, and there's a good chance they're going to win this whole thing. But is it aesthetically pleasing? I don't think it is, and I think that's an issue that needs to be looked at the league level. You shouldn't be able to, you know, if that happened in days past where you had none of your starters, and you'd be decimated and you wouldn't win games. You'd be out of the playoffs. But they're just chugging along. You know what I mean? No problem.
Yeah, I look at the Dodgers, just comparing the Dodgers and the Guardians, because the Guardians are the have-nots in the Final Four. I think their payroll is 132 million or 102 million, whatever
Right.
it is. But
Yeah.
it's like the Dodgers and the Guardians are like two guys sitting at a roulette wheel, and they both put $500 down. But the one guy came in with $1 million, and the other guy came in with $1,000.
That's
And
right.
like it means a lot more for one than the other. And I feel like the Dodgers can buy their way out of any issue that happens during the regular season. Like they can take a chance. They can roll the dice on signing a guy with injury history who's very talented as a starting pitcher. If he gets hurt, so be it. You go out and you get yourself a replacement at the trade deadline, another expensive trinket of a starting pitcher, and you can make up for your mistakes because they're not mistakes. They're calculated moves to get you to the postseason, which is
And
where
if you do make a mistake, it doesn't matter. It's called bankroll management, man. Like you're sitting at the roulette table, you're going to back the guy with $1 million. So he can afford to have bad luck. He can afford to take those
yeah.
chances. And the Cleveland Guardians cannot. So eventually that's, in the long run, you're going to bank that guy, the Dodgers. You're right. Now you could talk about if that's good or bad or for the game and the difference in payrolls, but that's absolutely the facts. Of why the Dodgers are still rolling as they are. You know what I mean? Year after year. That's how they approach the game, and I would do the same if I were them.
Do you think that the fact that this is the first year of a balanced schedule where all the National League teams play all the American League teams and the intra-division games have been reduced? Do you think that that format has anything to do with the three highest spending teams qualifying for the Final Four? I mean, I was trying to think about it in a certain way. Like six of the top 10 payroll teams in baseball made it to the postseason. Five of the bottom 10 made it to the postseason, which is crazy. And only one of the middle 10, which was the Milwaukee Brewers, made it to the postseason. So spending a lot of money, was six of the 10 teams were among the 12 finalists. Five of the bottom 10, but three of those were in the AL Central, who all
Well,
qualified because they pounded the White Sox.
well, I was just going to
So
say that the rule, I mean, you were going to get some bottom payrolls in the playoff just by design because
yeah,
an entire division isn't
because
spending money.
entire division,
Somebody's got to go.
right?
So,
But
I
then
mean,
then the AL Central went out and got a division winner and then two wild cards because their schedule was a little softer.
correct.
Do you think that maybe baseball should eliminate some of those or redistribute some of those games and go like the NFL and have the stronger teams play other strong teams and the bottom feeders play other bottom feeders, sort of to equalize like the NFL does, and it works out for them.
Well, so I guess that's a broader conversation of how we consume sports in North America. Do I think that? No, I don't. I think in baseball you play 162 games for a reason, and you're supposed to filter out all those bad teams. But they don't want that anymore. So we want tournament baseball, which is always bad for producing the best team. Tournament baseball in all the sports. I mean, the Pirates, if they get in, could win the World Series. I mean, they torched the Dodgers a couple years ago throughout the season because that's baseball. So what I'd like to see is a filtering of the playoff system. That's not going to happen. We should not have six teams in the game in the postseason. You're rewarding mediocrity, and when you reward it, teams design their whole program around it. We can go to what the Blue Jays are trying to do
And
about
what they said,
meaningful baseball in September.
meeting for
Seriously,
baseball in September, and that was
that
like
means we're trying to sneak in
pat
the back
yourself
door
on
of
the
the
back.
sixth seed. Yeah, like that is not building a good program, or and maybe it's not wrong. Maybe the goal is to try to get into the tournament, because how much better chance do the Yankees and Dodgers actually have than the Guardians and the Tigers heading into the tournament? Now, you can calculate it. I mean, there are betting markets which are extremely liquid and accurate. So it's not, the Dodgers don't have some enormous advantage like the NBA teams do because of the design of the sport. Baseball is more of a crapshoot in the playoffs. So I think you've got enough games where you shouldn't have to go, well, the top team should play the top teams. Like the NFL has to do that by design because they play 17 games.
Yeah, whatever it is, 17, 18 games, whatever. Yeah.
16, 17, soon to be 18.
Yeah.
No question.
But every game is meaningful, and there's a week
Yes.
off that which they need because of the physicality of the sport. But we talked about the playoffs in the month of October for Major League Baseball, and it competes with the first full month of the NFL and the beginning of hockey and the beginning of basketball, and yet they don't seem to be doing themselves in Major League Baseball any favors. People are talking about breathlessly about how it would be great for the game if the Mets and Yankees met in the World Series. That's bullshit.
It is bullshit.
Because
Actually.
in 2000, when they
we've
met,
seen it before, Rich,
yeah,
right?
in 2000, when they met, the ratings were among the lowest. People couldn't believe it. Well, people in the New York area couldn't believe it. But it's like, it's just baseball. The commissioner's office is not showing leadership in terms of making sure the product is at its best when the competition is at its sternest. And that's the month of October. Like people, we talked about the Dodgers and them not looking at all like the regular season Dodgers. Now, if that's the case with Dodger fans, what about the rest of the country? What about the rest of the continent?
Right.
Do they know who pitched the first three games matched up in the Dodgers and Mets series? I don't think they do. I don't
I
think
don't think
anybody's
there's
got
probably
any.
some Dodger fans that don't know
And
anymore, because you're moving parts in and out a lot these days in baseball. That's the issue with baseball, with always just churning through arms, max velocity,
yeah.
throw the guy out, bring the next guy in. There's nothing for fans to sink their teeth into. As for, that's my guy, that's the story of the game. Oh, game one is this guy versus this guy. Game two is this guy. Comparing, one of the
That
joys
was the
and
joy of it, of the World Series, of the postseason.
or baseball in general. I can remember off seasons and just getting excited about baseball. Look at the rotation for the Angels versus the
Yeah.
rotation for this team, and both, and how it would stack up, and that was a story that you could sell, and that's how people consume the product. And now there isn't a story, but that's a larger league issue. I mean, the teams are just doing what they need to do to win baseball games, and you just can't fault the teams for playing by the rules. It's the rules and the way the game is designed that has changed this and created this product we have.
Yeah, I mean, the network, even the network that's televising the postseason, all they could say was that the Dodgers had thrown 3 shutouts in the previous 4 games. They didn't mention one pitcher's name because they didn't know. And
There's
like
18 of them.
some guy might have pitched in all 3 of those games,
Right.
and at various points, 4th inning, 6th, 7th, whatever. So there's nothing for the casual fan, and that's who you need to attract when you've got your crown jewel of the postseason.
Dude, I'm watching some comments on the game last night, and everybody's raving about what a tremendous outing by Walker Buehler. 4
Yeah.
innings. Because we cannot risk him going into the 5th and 6th. That's just way too risky. You know what I mean? And the point is, they don't have to risk it because they can go get arms. And another thing, again, that didn't happen in years past, so you mentioned this previously, there's days off all the time. So when you have days off, you can try to burn through your bullpen a little harder and play that long game. Where in years past, there shouldn't be days off. You should play the game.
Yeah.
It's a distinct change in how you approach the games.
I don't know if I mentioned in the earlier rant, but Yamamoto with 90 and two-thirds innings being the most or the busiest Dodger pitcher on the current active roster, 90 and two-thirds innings for the entire season. And
I don't
he
know how he's
the
I don't
most
know how
innings.
he's holding up.
Yeah,
I
because
mean, come on now.
he
Like
only has to
90
go
innings.
two.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell that to Bob Welch and Dave Stewart and or anybody from, you know what I mean? And I know yell at clouds, old man here, but
But
I don't have a problem with it's just it's not pleasing on the same
But
level.
I'm glad you brought up the off days because in the first two rounds, and now they go to the traditional 2 games, then an off day, 3 games, then an off day, and then the final 2 games. So this is more traditional, but in the first couple of rounds, you could get by with, the same four bullpen guys being your leverage guys late in games because you had a game and then an off day and then game two, and then a travel day, and then 2 more games, and then another travel day, and then I mean, it's easy. And so the teams that had the best leverage relievers were the ones that had the advantage, not the teams who had the best starting pitchers, because you didn't need your starters to go 6, 7, 8 innings. And the game is suffering because of it. You're right. We're beginning to sound like angry old men, but
Well, here
the
it's not
baseball
even
commissioner's office could have a part in correcting what's happening right now.
but it's the reality, Rich. It's not like you're complaining about something you just miss and love and nobody else cares about it. The truth of the matter, the popularity of the game has been declining. That is indisputable. I mean, nothing tells you more about that than what the TV network did last night. They decided to move a playoff baseball game to Fox 1 because the Masked Singer was on the premium network. That's just telling you how popular. They wouldn't do that with a Super Bowl or a playoff game or an NBA game. That just wouldn't happen on any level. Major League Baseball is starting to venture into NHL territory, and and those are indisputable facts. So if I'm the leadership of Major League Baseball, rather than get upset about it, you've got to ask why and what's changed and why is the game in decline in popularity and what do you do about it? Because it's not old man yelling at clouds. Those are just people aren't paying attention. I don't know about your kids, but my kids who grew up in a obviously very sports centric environment aren't watching. Like it's just not on their radar. You know what I mean? And that's the real, that's the real issue we're talking about here.
Yeah, my 8-year-old grandson, we were watching the game at our place, and the afternoon game with the Dodgers, and Kike Hernandez came to the plate, and Brett at 8 years old said, "Oh, he's got 14 postseason home runs." And then like I went, "What?" And
How did I miss that story?
all of a sudden the graphic comes up and it says 14 postseason home runs. And I'm thinking, this 8-year-old kid knows that. So somebody's watching. Maybe the next generation of player.
Well, hopefully,
Yeah.
but not enough of them. That's evident. Not enough of them. Or
I
it'd
got
be
that.
on Fox. They're watching Mass Singer apparently.
Yeah. Well, I hopefully the Masked Singer's identity wasn't like Herschel Walker or somebody,
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it could be Sammy Sosa or
Yeah.
something. So there's a tie in there. There is maybe they're smarter than we think. Maybe there's a baseball.
Yeah.
All those conspiracy theories. Maybe they're in cahoots. So we're gonna tie it into the Mass Singer. So
That's an idea we should feed MLB because they're screwing it up on their own right
because
now.
nobody wants to watch the game.
Nobody
But
wants to watch. Nobody.
yeah,
Even regular season, and this is the last point I make before we move on, but even regular season games had a certain appeal to gamblers, to fantasy league owners who might not live in that town, but had a player on their team from another city or a pitcher and need wins. And like wins in everybody's fantasy league are a loser's game right now. Like nobody,
oh yeah,
the only wins are being recorded by relievers. Like you got, oh, I said I wasn't going to go on and on about this, but you got
well,
openers who pitch
right.
2 innings, and then the next guy comes in and pitch 3 and gets the win. You know, I used to be a big proponent of wins when starters were expected to go 6, 7, and 8. And to the Blue Jays' credit, they have 3 guys, and maybe 4 if you count Bowden, the new Bowden Francis. They got 4 guys who could carry you into 6, 7, and 8 innings regularly throughout the course of a regular season, and that's something to be admired. But there's fewer and fewer teams, and you know, baseball and all sports being copycat, you may get teams looking at the postseason and going, "Oh, we're just going to roll reliever after reliever. We're going to build a bullpen day into our rotation every 5 days, and Bob's your uncle."
Right, because you can do it now. And that's my point is Major League Baseball has got to think, why are these teams able to do it? And there's a lot of reasons. Obviously, as time went on, Rich, the rules kept changing to allow for it under the guise of maybe being careful with injuries and things like that. Everything's changed to allow this environment to foster, which is not a good environment. You know what I mean? And you can put guys on a DL, the DL, which is now the IL. Sorry, can't
Yeah,
say that.
please.
But I mean, back in the day, it was 30 days, and then it moved to 21, and then it moved to 15, and then it moved to 10. So you get options to make transactions and not put guys on. They're not injured. They're abusing the system. If you want to fix that and not allow for so many players to come in and out of your rosters, make it a 30-day DL. So the guy is not, he's going, actually, I'm not really hurt that bad. I'm not going on the DL. And you have to use, there's different things you can do. A guy goes on the DL for 30 days. That's for real. You know what I mean? Now it's just a place to transact and get a new guy up here for the next day's bullpen. And
Yeah,
that's problem number one. You know what I mean?
my idea in that regard, and I agree, but my idea in that regard is that if you call somebody up from your AAA team, then the moment he sets foot in your clubhouse, he gets major league money the rest of the year. And then, so when you
Sure.
send him back down, he doesn't go back to AAA salary. He stays with major league salary. And that would prevent, like what the Blue Jays did in September. It was a casting call for strong arm relievers. And I believe they came up with 0 in terms of the waiver wire and bringing guys up and then sending them back down after a day or two or putting them again on waivers. That might have somewhat of an impact if you're loaded with major league minimum guys by the middle of September, rather than just guys that are back at AAA salaries. I think that might have some, but I like the longer IL for everyone,
Right.
pitchers, players.
You have
Yeah,
to think about it.
yeah.
You have to
You,
think
you
about it. And
can,
maybe you manage your bullpen a little differently because you can't burn through guys. Somebody's got to, dial it back and be your long man, in those cases. And you just got to be a little smarter. And when you do that, all of a sudden you can't take the starter out because he can't go through the third time through the order. How about he has to go the third time through the order, and the real talent becomes which guys can do it. You
yeah,
know what I
I'm
mean?
not sure that, like, because we don't know about muscle strains, and then you'd have fake hamstring pulls your lower back or whatever, which nobody can really check. I don't think that that's a solution. We'll figure it out as we move down the road with exit philosophy, because
Right.
we both exited and we both have philosophies, so it fits together nicely. Next topic, and again, this might sound like an old man topic. Are major league players and coaches getting too soft? I mean, the overreaction of incidents on the field, like the ball being bounced into the screen by Manny Machado. And we talked about that last week with Pascual Perez throwing it in the dugout in Chicago at Wrigley Field. But in this case, Dave Roberts files a complaint with the commissioner's office. Then you got guys staring at each other. You got guys gesturing at each other. You got guys yelling at each other across the field. You got Padres players reacting to fans and trolling fans. Of course, and then you have that Ravens fan looking for Commanders
Oof.
fans and beating the shit out of him on the street. So
Well,
is
he's
this
about to get
a
the shit
societal
beat out of
thing?
him in a different manner.
Yeah. Is it a societal thing, or is it just a sporting thing? And is it something we're going to have to live with moving down the road?
Oh, I think it's no question a societal thing. I think, there's one thing that's obvious to me is that people are addicted to being offended. Like they're just addicted to somehow offensive. Everything's offensive to them. You know what I mean? And it's like we can't express it enough. Yeah, it's a different, time. And I mean, you can't handle things the way you used to, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think we want to go back to brawls all over the place. And I think, when you're transitioning from that male masculinity of days gone by, I think it's a good thing we're moving away from it. I think we just haven't found the way how to handle those things. Dave Roberts, we talked about that. That's just a sad way to go about this. That's not how you want to conduct yourself as a manager of a Major League Baseball team. How about you just deal with it in another fashion or ignore it because it was that irrelevant? You know what I mean? But I think it is a societal thing where that's just kind of, we're always looking to have we're always staring and are offended and angry, but nothing ever gets accomplished because, that's just the, it's politics, it's society, it's our social media way of life.
I think
But
social
we can't.
media has, yeah, social media has a large part to do with it because in terms of being offended and being indignant, I just look at Lindor throwing the ball home for a play at the plate and it coming within a foot of Shohei Ohtani's head and the call for Lindor to be suspended, I
Right.
mean, it's not like Pearl Harbor or anything. This
No, and
this
and
is
back in the day, they'd literally fight. Like you would
yeah.
have
Yeah.
brawls. Like
And
like
in
like
fact, it's so rare these days to see the bullpens clear and the dugouts clear that when Mikhail Garcia slid into, I guess, was it Volpe?
yeah, Vulpe.
And they brushed each other and pushed and stood up and the bullpens and everything cleared. It struck me then that we don't see that as much anymore, which is to your point earlier, it's not a bad thing, but
No, you like
but it's become so commonplace that guys stare at each other and glare at each other and trash talk each other that the bullpens just go off. Let's
yeah,
stay here.
okay, we'll be there in a couple
Yeah,
minutes.
we'll
Hang
be
tight.
there. We'll be
We're
there
we'll be
shortly.
there. But I mean, and it's absurd. You know what I mean? Like you should go ask Cal McRae what it was like, how he was handling himself back in the day and some of the slides he would take. And you don't want that though. Like the game is quicker, faster, played with bigger, stronger men. Like we're heading in the right direction. But when you have old guys like us who are longing for their childhood and all those things, that you can see this in the political landscape. You're hanging on to what you knew because your power's slipping away, and it's time to move forward, everybody. In the process, is it absurd at times? Yeah, it is. Is everybody really soft? Yeah, they are. Like those are, especially in the sporting world. Come on, like guys are trying to play baseball. That the Volpe thing, like there was nothing. It was nothing. Like at the
Uh,
end of the day, and here we are with some sort of like something really happened and it didn't.
yeah. I worry about it. Just even though it's maybe under control in pro sports, that it's filtering down into kid sports because both my grandsons play uh, competitive basketball and baseball, and they copy what they see on TV. And like I'm looking at some basketball games, and a guy will throw up an air ball from the free throw line. They're only 10 years old, and all of his teammates will come over and expect to be high fived, like I just missed the rim and everything, and you're coming over to slap my hand. Like I would again, old
I
man
agree. I
clowns.
agree. I mean, yeah,
But
it's the old participation award,
yeah,
right? I
and
mean,
then the celebrations on a layup or something after one of these 10-year-olds or 8-year-olds sinks a basket. There's celebrations. The 8-year-old Brett, he waves his finger like Dikembe Mutombo when he deflects somebody's shot who's shooting from the waist.
Because at the end of the day, Rich, it's the adults who are the assholes always. One, the fact that you're there to see it tells you something. Back in my day, my father wouldn't known, no offense, most parents wouldn't known you actually had a game other than get on your 10 speed, go, come back, don't get hurt, see you later. There was no, everything's a family event now. So that all filters into they're only behaving the way they see all the adults behave. So that's why you're getting all the shake, that stuff. And of course, when we do get involved, we have to make sure everybody's, participating and being acknowledged.
Well, some people
Yeah,
do.
yeah, because that's just how it goes. While we're actually
Funny you
screaming
should,
at them and
funny
giving
you
them
should
shit in the
mention
car
that
on the way
because
home.
it's funny you should mention that about back in the day when we were playing, because I remember the one time my dad showed up at a little league game that I was playing, and I played for,
Remember that one time?
yeah, the one I remember it
The
specifically. I
one
turned
time.
around
Oh
and
yeah.
and then high school basketball. I played for 4 years, and he showed up once, and it was just jarring to look into the stands. And that's why I feel that it's important for me to go to the games. I'm not going to stand out to my grandson like my dad did to me. And when he sees me there every day, it's an eye rolling. Oh my God, he's here again. But I just feel an obligation.
Well, because as a society, we eventually head in the right direction because it's the right thing to do, and you get value from it, and so does he, and it's a better way to operate. That's why you're there. But the process of getting there isn't always smooth. It's not linear, let's just say.
All right. Cito Gaston. You worked with Cito. He's
Yes, I
now an
did.
advisor. He's an advisor to the Toronto Maple Leafs intercounty team, which, as we all know, when you get a title like that, it doesn't really mean that much, but it's good for the organization, and it's good to see Cito back in the spotlight again in a minor sort of way. But what were your impressions of working with Cito, and where does he rank among managers with whom you've worked?
I will tell you, having worked with Cito Gaston, it was probably the most enlightening thing for me as a young baseball fan when he was the manager the first time. All I had was the data, like watching the games, and I think a lot of people criticize Cito's moves, and he was not on par with some other guys. I learned more about baseball from Cito Gaston than probably anybody I've been with. I will tell you, there's two people that over the years, probably people find this funny, that is like going to just the school of baseball and just learning how the game is played. Cito Gaston was one, and the other was JP Ricciardi. Watch a game with JP Ricciardi, and you're going to learn how the game is played, and just pure joy. And never mind, it's funny along the way. But Cito really taught you how to manage people, and he was obviously not the same guy he was, and not in touch with the players the same way. But how he approached the game, how you play the game on the field, not the analytics, not the results, not how you manage people. It was just every day was just never mind the stories, but just how the game was played. Just you learn, and we all think we know baseball, and you don't know baseball until you speak to guys like that who really knew how to play the game on a daily basis. I just nothing but respect for Cito Gaston, and just a tremendous man. There's just nothing else I can say. Tremendous man, and learned so much, and it was just a joy to be, working with him on a daily basis, being on the road. It just was a great time. I don't know what else I can say about the man. He was that good.
Yeah, I remember 92, 93 World Series. I was at the World Series, but never, I was doing commissioner's office game notes. So all I did was observe Cito at work. And the shots of him in the dugout where fans criticized because he was so cool, calm, and collected in the dugout.
Right.
It's like, what do you want him to do? You want him to be throwing his hat and kicking water buckets and stuff? No, that was Cito, and because he was in total control. But I remember when I did show up in 95 after the strike, because that's when I left the Expos. I went to spring training, and he wasn't working because of the principle of the games weren't going to be played at Rogers Center or at Skydome. and he wanted to support and didn't want to manage a team of replacement. So the first time I saw him was opening day, or when they got back to training camp at the end of the strike, when Judge Sotomayor ended the strike and they went back to spring training. So just as an aside, I show up at opening day at Skydome, and there's 38,000 people there. And they weren't able to sell any tickets because of this. They weren't going to play any games there, right? So they had 2 weeks to sell tickets. And so I come from Montreal, from the Expos situation, and I get a frantic call from the Star Sports Desk saying, you got to do a feature. You got to do a column on what happened to the crowds and what are they going to do? And I look around, there's 38,000 people there, and I'm coming from Montreal, and I go, I don't see a problem. What the hell are you talking about? But Cito, getting to know Cito was great, because I knew Felipe Alou, and there were so many overlaps in the history of those two men, and two men that I admire tremendously, but they had the same background, one coming from the Dominican, one coming from Texas, both around the same generation. And just, I understood Cito from the start because I understood Felipe from working with him all those years in Montreal. And like, there's so much that fans didn't understand about Cito Gaston, and he deserves everything he's gotten in terms. He should be in the Hall of Fame, is just what I'm thinking.
No question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story that I like. And I think the part that gets missed by a lot of the public, and in fairness, they're not inside, so they don't see it. So you're only dealing with the information you have, which is usually stats. They're human beings playing the game. They're human beings. And what goes into making a human being perform better or worse, And I remember we were on the road one time, and I'm not sure exactly what the situation was, but there was a criticism of why he didn't make this move, that move. And we're just sitting, he goes, Mal, he goes, I'll tell you a story. He goes, I remember the World Series teams. He goes, it was a game in April, maybe early May. He goes, we were down late ninth inning. Candy Maldonado was coming to the plate. There was a tough righty on the mound, and I left him to hit. And he goes, I got killed for that. Everybody's like, he pinch hit, bring in a guy. He goes, whatever. He goes, you know why I did it? He goes, because I wanted Candy to know there's going to come a time late in the year in September where he's going to need to perform, because he's going to be in that situation where he's going to have to get a hit off a tough right-hander. So if I don't believe in him today and give him the opportunities today, what am I going to expect in September? And I thought that was a brilliant thing. So he's managing people, and he was doing that with the current Jays too. So he goes, it's not always about winning just today's game. He goes, we had a great ball team. We were trying to win the World Series. We were looking at the long term. And Cito's background, with everything he faced, the racism, those stories are just heartbreaking and unbelievable to listen to. But boy, does it give him some perspective on how to treat people and how to manage people. And that story just told me a lot about Cito and how he managed. He wasn't a guy that was he wasn't doing the old, and Buck Showalter, who I also like as a manager, but very black and white. You pinch hit, you platoon, you do all these things, and you maximize your chance to win every day on that day. He's taking a bigger picture of the person he was managing and how he wanted them to feel about their role on the club. And I thought that was really enlightening, and it was just that's Cito in a nutshell. That's who Cito Gaston is as a person, and I really love that.
Yeah, and to me, that type of thinking is why Bruce Bochy and Dusty Baker were in the World Series a year ago, because they're hybrids of strategy and human relations. And there's none of that going on. Do you think Cito Gaston would have taken Barrios out for Kikuchi when he was dealing in the third inning, or 1.5 times through the order? I don't believe he would have. I think he would.
I can see him right now. If you'd even suggested it to him, I could see his face. He's always calm too. Always calm. He'd be just like, there is no chance in hell that's happening. Thanks for your input, gentlemen. And That's the kind of thinking though that's missing, I think, just in everyday life. We were talking earlier in this podcast about Major League Baseball needs to think about the long-term product they're putting out there instead of the just today. How much are
Yeah.
we
It's funny you mentioned that because there was a quote after the game, after the Dodgers game 3, and it was a on-field interview, and the quote was, like, how does it feel? Whatever, cliched question, and the answer was, yeah, we're winning this for all 60 people in the clubhouse. I'm going, 60 people in the clubhouse. No wonder there's a problem in communicating.
Well, there was just as an aside to that, there was a interview with one of the Jays after a big win, and they were talking about somebody that came into the clubhouse to help give them advice, and the guy goes, "It's like a fourth hitting coach, like a fourth hitting coach." But he was right. They have three.
Yeah.
I think the absurdity of the number of people around there, maybe the message is a little convoluted at this point.
I mean, we talked about this, I think, also, is like it used to be us against them, everyone in the clubhouse against the outside world.
Very much.
And
Small
it
community.
was like Spartans, leaving. Now there's nothing Spartan about the new clubhouse. You could go a whole homestand and not see a middle reliever if you are George Springer, or if you're a starting player who's in the batting cages or lying in the hot tub or whatever the float pool is. You could go a whole homestand and not talk to a teammate.
Rich, you can do it on the road now. I remember when, we were doing this, there was a very small group of the travel team, and you really felt like you were all in it together. The players and a very small staff, contingent. Since, the last, say, 10 years, all of a sudden, you almost need a second plane for everybody out there, and there's more staff than players. I mean, that cannot be a good thing, because it gives the perception that more is better, and we're providing the best, and at the end of the day, you end up providing nothing because there's too much.
And part of it was, especially on the road, the 5 coaches and maximum 6 coaches dressed in the main clubhouse, because they were usually small, intimate clubhouses, and the 6 coaches were confidants of the players.
Right.
And now, as you just pointed out, I would say there's 12 to 14 people considered as coaches, and then there's the flexibility staff, the training staff, the strength staff, the lifeguard for the floating pool. And who can you trust? Who can you go to?
I want that job. Okay, that's actually the job I'd like to get. And most importantly, when you have that many people around, what happens? The first thing the players want to know, which ones are the moles?
I was just going to say that. That was
which ones are the moles, because they're there.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't have that tight group where everybody feels that we're in it together, us versus them, and that doesn't help.
Next, in a moment of candor, on the last homestand, I asked John Schneider about how many games the bullpen cost his team, and I specifically said since the trade deadline, because that's when they got rid of some guys, and Romano was already out for a while, and Jimmy Garcia was sent away, and like they were left with Chad Green as the closer and a bunch of arms as the setup guys. And he said he thought about it, and then we went on to something else, and then he came back and he said about 10 losses attributable to the bullpen. So now from 74 going into the final weekend, you go to 84 because of the 10, and then you take seriously the Marlins series. So like a couple of wins there gives you 86. Now you're tied with the Tigers and the Royals. And if one of those 10 was against the Tigers or the Royals, you're ahead of them. You're a wild card team.
Yeah, but
is that all they need to do?
No.
Is correct the bullpen?
No, that was awfully convenient how you got to 86. I mean, what about all the bullpen blown saves for the other teams they're
Oh
chasing.
yeah, right.
We forgot about those ones. Those get to stay. It's just
Yeah,
ours that
those we're
yeah.
just we're just
Those you
talking
get.
here.
Yeah. That's like I remember one year out of care. It was maybe 06, 07, and the Jays had this tremendous offense and went out and added some pitching, and you're just like, oh man, you know, with this pitching, we're going to be right there. We forgot that the offense doesn't automatically stay the same from year to year. It's just, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, things do change. Oh, forgot about that. So next year the offense was no good. It's like, yeah, in a perfect world, you go, well, if we get all those 10 wins that we're guessing at for starters, but if, in fairness, there was a lot of games the bullpen did blow, that everything else remains the same. It doesn't remain the same. They still got, you know, it's an organism that changes and adapts, and you know, not everything remains the same, as they say. So, but do they need to fix the bullpen? Unequivocally, and maybe that is the quickest path to success. I do agree there. You can do something about that with somewhat limited funds and get a real change in your fortune, unlike other problems that they face.
Yeah, there's say you have 4 or 5 usable bullpen guys coming back, maybe 6.
Right.
You know, if Romano comes back healthy and some of the other guys
Yeah,
are,
some good fortune. Some good fortune,
yeah,
sure.
so say 5. Let's settle on
Yep.
5. And I just went over a list of free agent relievers. This isn't trades. This isn't anything.
Right.
This isn't $10 million guys. You got Hector Neris, Will Smith, Thielbar, Conley, Canley, or whatever his name is, Hill with the Yankees, Loizaga coming back, Scott Alexander, Jimmy Garcia, Leclerc, Yates, Yarborough, who should be brought back, Sewald, Trinan, Stanek, Hoffman, Beeks, Barucki, Scott, and Kitteridge. I mean, you
Yeah,
sign
there's guys.
2 or 3 of those guys for a reasonable amount of money. You know, the bullpen is headed towards being better. And then you need to find 1 or 2 guys in your own organization who maybe was being projected as a starter, throws 98 to 100, has a limited repertoire, maybe 2 and a third mediocre pitch, 2 good pitches and a mediocre pitch. Bring them up, throw them in middle relief, see what develops. And your bullpen
That
problems are
unlike Ross's comments about power, I said the bullpen's literally the low hanging fruit. I mean, that's the low
yeah,
hanging fruit.
yeah, that
I
was
mean, it's
he often has quotes that come back to bite him in the ass, and
maybe 1 or 2 along the way.
the low hanging fruit is wow. Yeah,
It's actually pretty high on the tree, I think. But yeah, there's lots of relievers to
which
pluck off the low branches and instantly, you know, give you a little, make you better than you were a year ago. No
right.
question. I think that goes without saying. That's going to make them more competitive out of the chute.
Speaking of that, run prevention is another, and process, and there's some expressions that this front office uses. Run prevention is one of them, and so the Gold Glove nominees came out, and Dalton Varsho is the center field nominee. Ernie Clement, for some reason, got a third base nod. I don't even know how many games he played over there, but
Right.
I think his runs prevented per whatever that
His
stat
defensive
plot,
run saved. His
there had to be a
defensive run
plus at
saved
the
were
end.
very good.
Yeah,
Yes.
and but Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Gabby Moreno are both nominated for Gold Gloves. I thought run prevention was a key.
Well, 2 things about that. Run prevention, in my honest opinion, is not something they attained to acquire and build their team around. It's something you say after you realize you can't hit anymore. The guys you have aren't hitting. So
Right.
run prevention sounds really, highbrow for just a failure to get good players. So yes, hopefully some of them could play some defense out
Yeah,
there.
hit it.
Secondly, if Lourdes Gurriel's got anywhere near a Gold Glove, I don't know. We have to rethink the whole process. And in fairness, I'll give the Jason credit on this one. It's like not possible. He has a skill out there, and that's his arm. Beyond that, there is no defense that is at an elite level. There's a lot of confusion going on, and then left field he's out there, but he can throw guys out. So that you've got that. But yes, I think your broader point is you had some pretty good players in this organization that have some elite skills, and they're no longer there. And I think that's probably the fair question is to ask, how do you get to that point in the first place? Because you know, you got two guys they're up for a Gold Glove on another team, and you moved them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So not a good trade,
No.
no matter what way you
Offense,
slice it.
offense, increasing in the run production is a high hanging fruit.
Yes, it is. The power is the high hanging
You
fruit.
need some sort of some
You've
sort
got to
of,
dig a little deep to get
yeah.
to where you want to be on that one. And I guess the question, and again, it's not, you can argue about moves they make. Everybody makes good moves. Everybody makes bad moves. It's not about, oh, they never make a good move. That's clearly not true. What you can ask is, how do they get to the place they're in today? How do you get to that place where you had a very good offensive team a few years ago, and now it's not good at all? And I think, that's the conversation, and I think people should be asking the questions on. How does this management team get this organization to the position it's in today? Because no matter what way you cut it, it's bad. Those are the
Yeah.
fair questions to ask, not whether, oh, this guy, I don't like him, or that move specifically.
Well,
Why are they in this
here's a
position?
thought about improving the situation.
Mhm.
And I'm not suggesting that these are even possibilities, although if we put it as a headline, we get a lot of clickbait. Is that the word what the kids use now? Clickbait?
Yeah, that's right. It's a
But
bait of some
do
sort. Yeah.
you think it would be easier to approach Anthony Santander or Teoscar Hernandez if Vlad was signed to a longer term deal? Do you think it would be easier to convince those two guys that maybe you want to be a part of this?
Absolutely. And again, that's what I'm getting at. You have to ask why the organization's in the position it is. And one of those things is, and I would have went back to the press conference, there were two questions. Why are your stars not signed? And most importantly, why were they not signed 3 and 4 years ago? There's only two answers to that question. You don't like the player, or they don't want to be here. And there's no other way. This isn't about the dollars, because that happened years ago. That happened. Those offers were made and rejected. So would you be more likely to acquire other players if Vlad Guerrero was here for 10 years? Obviously. Vlad's buying into the system, and your team's going to be better. Who wants to sign a 5-year free agent deal if it's looking like Bo's gone and Vlad seems to be in no hurry to get this done? No, regardless, it's not done. So whatever reason you want to speculate on why, yes, that's who I as a free agent would be going, okay, now tell me why. What's the plan to get this team's stars signed? And how come they're not? This is baseball, not hockey. You don't wait till the end of the contract.
Yeah, and then you have Jose Barrios, who is looking around and sees the same thing you just outlined, and he's got an opt-out after 2026. Well, it's great that he's pitched 32, he's made 32 starts 5 years in a row, but it's not going to reach 8 if he sees what's going on with this organization. And then how do you replace that? How do you replace that reliability of 6+ innings 32 times a season?
And we can argue, and we'll get into it. I have my opinions on why, but you can argue all you want why, and this guy and that guy. The fact remains is none of the players are here. You did not get your guys to stay. They're playing on the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, the Rangers, all the players you had, the Giants. They're and usually performing in the playoffs. So that's how do you got like that's just the reality where the team is.
Okay, I got one more topic here,
Yep.
which is near and dear to your heart, I know, is because Mattingly, your son, played Division I. My son Pat was a catcher, Division II, College of St. Rose. They had their name stolen, the Golden Knights, by the hockey team in Vegas, and now the college has had to shut down because they didn't get a proper settlement. No, I made that last part up, but they were the Golden Knights,
Right.
and it was Division II, but Canadians and the opportunities they have. I know it's a topic that's near and dear to your heart. Like, how much has it grown since our boys were kids, where the opportunity to play in the States is there, and then the opportunity to learn enough to come back and coach and be a part of the next generation? I mean, to me, that's heartening.
I agree, and it's become an industry unto itself. I can think when I was playing, I mean, like we played hockey. Baseball was my game. I loved it, but it was just there was never any thought of doing anything beyond your local community. It just did not exist. It wasn't part of your, at all part of the process. And as times moved on, our kids had opportunities that popped up that didn't exist previously, where Canadians started to be able to go into the US, develop their skills, and programs popped up like are in the CPBL now, which is the elite level of baseball for prospective players. You've got your Ontario Blue Jays, Toronto Mets, Great Lakes Canadians, those elite teams that are actually there's the industry. They're grooming players to play professional baseball, to be elite baseball players, and not just something you did when you weren't playing hockey, because that's how it was. My son, even Mattingly, he ended up playing baseball, but he literally played hockey. It was all about hockey. And then in the summer, he tried lacrosse and he played baseball and he did all these other things. And it wasn't until you're like, wait a minute, maybe he's a pretty good player. And there is an actual opportunity to play baseball, not just it dies on the vine when you get to a certain age. So now kids are littered throughout the US. There's like almost 500 kids right now playing US college ball. And then I think there's another 330 committed to go in the next year or two. It's 800 kids right there that have opportunities that didn't exist 2-3 decades ago. And it's just getting bigger and bigger, and as it should. And so businesses are popping up. I talk about a fellow we work with, TJ Burton with the Blue Jays, who did a lot of the alumni stuff and the T12 stuff back in the day, and the elite program, whatever they call it now, that tournament he was responsible for. He's just recently gone to Ottawa to take over a program that is youth elite baseball that's going to do exactly what those other teams are doing. So there's opportunities for kids to actually play baseball at the highest level they can. And that's getting bigger. You know what I mean? That's just getting bigger in this country.
I remember a couple of years ago, Bob Elliott on his Canadian website talked about
Canadian Baseball Network.
Canadian Baseball
But,
Network talked about how combined with Division One, Division Two, all the NCAA programs plus junior colleges, that there were 500 hockey players on scholarship, Canadians, and 750 Canadians on baseball scholarships, which was astounding to anyone who thought that Canadians can't play baseball or don't have the opportunity. And I know that hockey is restricted to the certain schools in northern
less opportunities.
Less opportunity, but it's just still astounding that that was actually a fact. And of course, his number included all the junior colleges that sort of are in the tornado alley and they can't get Americans to go or whatever.
Right.
But the futures, Canadian futures, which is what evolved out of T12, Pat, my son, is sort of a recruiter for that as part of his duty.
Very much involved in
Canadian for Scouting Canada, and the number of players that go and play there and then go on and play that get recruited or have commitment to major U.S. colleges and then go on to play pro ball. And 11 of them in 10 years have gone on and are playing in the major leagues. And to me, that's an encouraging sign for the sport. And I know that you have a special place in your heart for that. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Now,
go ahead.
Now, I think it's NFL time.
Okay.
I want to hear your take on the last Bills game, because we always start with because you're a big Buffalo Bills in stadium and on TV fan. Well, what did you think of the signing or the trade for the wide receiver?
Well, I thought it was a very smart move. I didn't think they would do anything, because if there's one thing that's, I think the club has told you, is that they're taking a step back this season. You don't move your number one wide receiver and take the entire cap hit in 1 year if you're literally balls out for a Super Bowl. They obviously didn't have a choice and felt they had to move on from the player, but they didn't spread the cap hit out over years. They took the hit and said, we're going to just go with what we have, which could be good enough because we got Josh Allen. We're not a Super Bowl caliber team for a year, but let's build that over the next few years and become a Super Bowl caliber team again. That being said, they're 4-2, and a wide receiver became available for almost no money. They couldn't add Devontae Adams. They had no cap space. And they added a higher end player for this season for like 800 grand, which is about all they had to spend. So I think it's a really smart short-term move that doesn't restrict anything they're going to do over the next few years, and just again, we're talking about Cito, we're talking about people. You think that doesn't give a boost to the locker room that, hey, guys, we're doing everything we can under the circumstances to give you guys the best chance to win this year. And I think it was very smart. I mean, they could end up winning 7 games still because they still have a lot of, depth issues, and how injuries go in this league. But with the state of the division, it's looking like they're obviously the odds-on favorite to win it. So why not give yourself a little boost? So I think they put themselves in the best spot they can for this year, and they're obviously setting themselves up with all the extra draft picks they've acquired and cap space, most importantly, that's going to be available to them starting next year to really solidify that roster. So I think what they're doing is smart, and I'm not often complimentary sometimes of what they do. So I really think it's been well played with the digs.
How do you think the acquisition of Amari Cooper affects Josh Allen both mentally and on the field?
Well, I think it just gives him a weapon. Now, the one thing, sometimes Sean McDermott is slow to get guys involved in his program. That's where I'll criticize, because it's all about Sean sometimes. So he's not always, looking to move rookies into he loves his long-term guys that have been with him forever. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Cooper, integration is slow and not exactly, he's not going to put up 7 for 120 this week. You never know. But for Josh, I mean, it takes the heat off, because it puts guys, the other receivers, into a better spot where they're supposed to be. When Shakir's your number one and you're running out of Mac Hollins and they let go MVS and Curtis Samuel, those guys are in spots they're not supposed to be in, and they're not getting open. So moves them down a peg.
Handling wide receivers is like handling a bullpen. You put a guy in high leverage and he shouldn't be there, and you lose a game, one of 10 that Judge Snyder says they lost.
Right.
It's not good for your bullpen. You got to put them in positions to succeed, and that's exactly what you're talking about with the Bills. We're recording on Thursday morning, late morning, so we'll ignore the Thursday night game, and we'll go to Sunday. I was 1-2 last week. I don't know what you were. What were you like?
Well, I was 2-1, although I lost my bonus Bills under. So we're not going to count the bonus one. I was 2-1. I had Detroit. I lost Detroit and Tampa Bay, and I lost the Denver one, which was never in doubt, as they say, on the wrong way.
Yeah, right. I hate when that happens. So 3 this week, and if you have an over/under you'd like to throw in as an uncommitted recommendation, we'll do that. So okay. I was 1-2, you were 2-1.
Yeah.
I'll go with my first pick first. I'm going to take, and I took them last week. I'm going to take and we're using the same line for these games. I'm going to take the Commanders -8 against the Panthers. I know that's low-hanging fruit, but I just think that the Commanders are on the way up, even with a rookie quarterback, as he gets used to the different looks that defenses are giving him. I think that -8 is not enough.
I didn't choose that one because I knew you would, because that seemed too low hanging fruit. I go, Griff's going to be all over the Commanders. So.
Right, you were.
Yeah. I took the Green Bay Packers -2.5 versus Houston. I think at home, Green Bay with Love back in the mix. Houston is, they've got a lot of weapons, obviously, and a great quarterback. I think less than a field goal. I think this is a game that Green Bay wins at home, and Houston, you see their flaws exposed a little bit. They're a good team, but I like Green Bay in this spot, so I'm going with them for my first pick.
My second pick, I've got the Bengals -6 against the Browns. I think that the Bengals are 2-4, and they could very easily be 3-3 or 4-2. They know that they're not desperate, but they know they're talented enough to be a playoff team. Amari Cooper, the number one weapon for Deshaun Watson, is gone, but Nick Chubb is back. And I don't think a running game is going to get them within 6 points of Joe Burrow and his talented offense with the Bengals.
I'm noticing a trend. You bet against the bad teams. I like it. You know, like find me the bad teams and I'm betting against them.
Just wait till you hear my just wait till you hear my third one. It's a
now, right. Well, I'm going to go contrarian to that theory, and I'm going to take the New York Football Giants +3 at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. And the reason is, one, it's an interdivisional game, and I think there's something to that for the Giants. I think they'll show up, but the defense for the Giants is just better than people think, and the Eagles are erratic at best. So I'm expecting a close game, and I don't know. I think Jalen Hurts in that environment is going to struggle a little bit. So I like getting the points at home with Danny Dimes, and just to hang around. It's going to be a close game.
Yeah. My third pick is the Jets -2 against the Steelers. And they're giving points, and that's a tough one to come up with, that they're giving points. Although they got the number one wide receiver that I was going to say Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers wanted.
Same thing.
But yeah. Russell Wilson, there's strong hints that Russell Wilson is going to start that game for
bonkers.
the Steelers. Which, the offensive coordinator is going to have to leave him a voicemail every play, because that's the only way he deals with teammates and coaches.
That's right. So I love that pick. It's not mine, but I think Russell Wilson is toast, and I think he's shown that for the last couple of years.
I think there's something behind the scenes with this move that involves contract, that involves something other than who's the better quarterback to put on the field at this point. I mean, there's just no reason for a 4-2 Steelers that has really surprised to go 4-2 with Justin Fields, that they should make a quarterback change at this point, because no one was expecting them to be in this position.
That's right. Yeah, there's no reason at all. I agree with you there. But my third pick, and I might have to hand in my fan card for this, is the Tennessee Titans +9.5 at the Buffalo Bills. I just think it's just too many points. I think Tennessee does have a good defense. There's no question. And while they lose all the close games, they play in them. That's important. And I think, I think it's a lot to expect Buffalo to come home with Amari Cooper and put up a 30 spot. I just think it's a lot to expect. Can it happen? Of course it can. But I think taking 9.5 points with Tennessee is the wise move, and that's going to be my third pick. So I expect the Bills to win, but by a touchdown would be fine. By 7 is good enough.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And backdoors are always a possibility in those games. So
we always like backdoors.
Oh my God, stop. I don't have
covers. You can take that out.
I don't have an over/under suggestion. Have you got one?
No, I it didn't go well last week, so I
thought maybe you'd throw the Buffalo Tennessee under in there too, since you're talking that way. It might be a good.
Sure, that's right. I mean, how about a lean to the under, as they say. A lean. So if it wins, you said I liked it. If it loses, it didn't count.
So we'll wrap up this week's Exit Philosophy, and you can go and get all of my stuff on griffsthepitch.com. If you subscribe, you will get it in your mailbox, everything that I put out, and we'll have some conversations coming up. And Mal and I might even track down somebody as a third panel on this screen and have an interesting guest for one episode.
I think that's a certainty.
I think that's a certainty. That's in the works.
Yeah.
So appreciate it, Mal, and thanks everybody for listening. And we'll be back at you next week.